Good night, YouTube. Let me fix the camera and let me make sure I get the message out to people. Oh. Night. I'm making sure that people are on my live and ready to go. What's going on with the hair? Okay. Whew. 7 o'clock. I'm on time. The last time I was late, thank you for the early joiners. Yeah, I have on my black Ignis shirt. Tonight, we are talking about AI and compliance. Now, I don't even know how long this is gonna last. Oh, I need to send this out to some people to let them know that I'm live. So give me a sec. Let them know that I am live, because there are a lot of people who are like, send me the link again, send me the link a third time, which is fine. And I'm doing that like right now. And I'm already sweating. It was the former director of the Turks and Caicos Islands FSC that said, he who is under the spotlight gets the heat. He is not lying, not even a little bit. So yeah, AI, we're gonna sending it to our people. I want this to be like the best, like the most popular live that I've had in a minute. And I'm gonna send some people one more set to say that I'm live. No. I'm already sweating. I have on the AC, but the AC is way back there. Let me see if I can. Yeah, the AC is way back there. So it's not quite doing it. All right, let's talk about AI and compliance. Let's talk about this. Let's get into it. My hair looks a mess. People, next week is my birthday. I don't know what to do for my birthday. As a bit of the preamble, I am off from work. So if you have any ideas about what to do for my birthday, drop them in the comments or hit me up DM if you have me access to me. Because yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm off from work. Anyways, so this year has been flying by. Welcome to the live. And, 2024 has been an eventful year for me. One of the things that I've been dealing with some personal issues, my back and neurological pain. So anything to do with the spine is neurology. But I'm in a better place and I'm healing. So yay. Progress is always good. Positive progress is always good. But now, as we get down into the last days of 2024, and I've been feeling better, I've challenged myself to finish the year strong. So I am planning to do more lives in the last few days of 2024 than I have done for the entire year. And yeah, it's a challenge that I set for myself, but guess what? I am healing and I am focusing on positive vibes, and I am here to help people and to share my knowledge, my views, my opinions. And so, whether you're watching live or after the live, please share with anyone you think would get value out of this discussion. It is geared towards empowering compliance professionals, but it's also geared towards empowering others, because when you have more knowledge in a particular space, you can make better decisions. At least that's my takeaway. For others that are focused on compliance, it is, change is the real only constant. There's a lot going on, and AI seems to be a topic that is really popular. And for 2024, I've spoken at now 3 conferences on AI. I was in Miami in, I think it was late March, early April, at Compliance Aid speaking on AI. I was in Belize. I also spoke on AI. And last week I was in St. Martin for the Caribbean Regional Compliance Association conference, speaking on AI on a panel. And it continues to be a topic. I've been contacted by some colleagues on the other side of the planet regarding AI, and just, to have some chats and what have you. And I'm always happy to do that, but I figure, like, why not have it on my YouTube channel? So yeah, I'm here. And one of the things that has been amazing in the last couple of days, like since my last live, I had just cleared 1,600 subscribers, and I noticed that the love has continued with existing and new subscribers. So just a little about 2 days ago, I blew past 1,800 subscribers. Now, when I say blew past, it's not like I'm at 2,000, but for me, it was like a big deal. So thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to all the old subscribers. Thank you to the people who support. And if you are not a subscriber, what are you waiting on? It's free. It's free. And I'm setting myself a challenge in terms of growing my page. So share the love, and anyone you think will find value, not just in the compliance space, to subscribe to the channel, because the aim is to have 10,000 subscribers. It is a huge goal. I've had this channel for now more than 2 years, almost 3. But I believe it is definitely possible. So now at this particular point in getting the live in, thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Gabriel, for joining. At this point in the live, I usually give my disclaimer. So here's my disclaimer. This content that I am providing here are all my views, and the content does not represent the views of any regulatory body or international standards setter. This live is also for entertainment personal purposes only, and not necessarily advice. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. So welcome again for those joining live, and for those joining after the live. If you're new to my channel, my name is Simone Martin, and I am a lot of things. I've worked as a regulator, and in a month, it'll be 23 years. I identify as a non-conventional regulator, but also a very approachable regulator and professional. I've also had a lot of amazing experiences in my career. I've been a teacher on and off, adjunct faculty at our community college here in the BVI since 2003, teaching business classes, a little break, and then back into the community college teaching some of the ICA courses, and formerly ICSA, now the Chartered Governance Institute courses that were being delivered through the college, but also as a trainer in my own right. So that's about 15 years in total. I'm also recently published, and that has been a big deal. And my first book is 10 Tips to Help Compliance Officers Soar. I have a planner coming out. The planner is finished. It's just to pull the trigger on publishing. So it'll be submitted after this live. And then once it's released by Amazon, hopefully over the weekend, it'll be available as well on Amazon. So the book is available on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And the link to the planner, it'll be in a community post. So definitely you look out for that. And I'm excited to have the very first compliance officer planner on Amazon and anywhere. I've looked and have not been able to find another compliance officer specific planner. So first iteration, and thank you for all the support. Now on to today's topic, artificial intelligence. The first time I spoke publicly on it was for a fintech conference in 2021. And it was a panel discussion. Of course, 2021 was during the pandemic, so it was virtual. And the conference was, I believe it was in either Hong Kong or Singapore. And it was a forum where I got to meet some awesome professionals, one from Mexico, one from the United States. The one from the United States is known as Dr. Big Data. And, I think I held my own. It was a really good panel. And even from before that, I was diving into AI because I was in Anguilla. But let me not like get ahead of myself. First of all, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? And many of us will think about Agent Smith from The Matrix, or if you are of a certain age, you would have watched various iterations of the Terminator movies. And if you're of a different age, there are different movies that have come out even before that. A Space Odyssey is one example, Blade Runner is another. In the Terminator movie, the AI that became self aware was named Skynet. And it was supposed to be a global defense system. It became self aware and it decided that the main threat that it was supposed to be, it was a defense system, and the main threat that it needed to defend itself against was humanity, hence the Terminator. More recent movies that talk about AI or focus on AI centric discussions or plots, Ex Machina, Megan, and so Megan is spelled with a 3, Avengers Age of Ultron. And if you're a Marvel fan, I've been into Marvel from like comic books back in my preteen days. Iron Man's Jarvis is also an example of AI. Now, these movies have their plots, but let's drill down to the actual technology that is artificial intelligence. And when you're looking at this particular topic, it's important, I think, to look at the definitions. And in prepping for the live, I looked up popular definitions. Now, when it comes to defining certain things, you tend to see Merriam or Oxford or whatever. But I was intrigued that the definitions as at October 2024 was somewhat nebulous in some places. But generally, AI is defined as computers or machines that simulate human intelligence to problem solving, right? So seems pretty simple enough. Human, like computers trying to solve problems that humans would be typically solving. And it's an area of research that has been going on for decades, even before I was born, since the 1950s. And when you dissect the definition to simulate human intelligence in problem solving, it is a matter to be able to think critically and to recognize things intuitively. And babies are really good examples of evolving intelligence when it comes to problem solving. They learn at an incredible rate. And in fact, in terms of any human, it is the fastest rate any of us will ever learn is from about birth to about 7 years old. And babies learn through experimentation. Every day, people talk about how kids grow up so quickly. And, I've seen it with my nephews, and it's a legit true thing. And it's a wonderful thing to see with babies. But when you think about a machine learning, and machine learning is actually a term, but we'll get into that. But the babies learn through experimentation, and they are trying to do different things. They try to roll over and there's a lot of movement. They recognize that the self-aware element is when they recognize that this thing in front of them is actually their hand. And they have a ton of inputs to help them learn. And the inputs are actually parents and guardians and different things in their surroundings, even things you put in their playpens. We use playtime to teach them. We use playtime to speak to them, or to learn, to show them colors and different shapes and textures. We read to them. We do so many things with babies, and they grow and learn because they are products of their environment. And that's a large part of it. But also, even when they're by themselves, they are experimenting as they go. And so it's essentially the same with artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence systems are like babies. they have to be taught to solve problems. But unlike babies who can soak up so much data inputs, machines and computers are not babies. It goes without saying. They have to be taught with certain inputs, and I'm very deliberate in saying inputs. Computers are the hardware, so the actual laptop, the phone, whatever, and AI is the software. And AI as a tool, it's a tool, it can be used to process really large sets of information, really large data sets. And I'm saying can be because AI will be as good or as bad as it is taught. And we see that with people on a regular basis. We see some people are a bit wayward because, again, they are products of their environment and maybe they didn't have the right inputs. If who am I to judge the right inputs? But societally speaking, you have some people who are taught not so good things and they grow up to be not so good people. But even with the best teachers, AI can be really good tools, but the work still has to be done by us mere mortals. And I'll get into that a bit later. So it's a tool, and when you think about tools, to make the analogy stick, think about a hammer. And when I was at the compliance conference last week, I used the analogy of AI being a hammer. The hammer is typically used to drive nails into materials and to remove them with the claw end of the hammer. The hammer could also be used to break things open. And I remember using my father's hammer to crack open walnuts around Christmas time. We're getting into that season. But to use a hammer effectively, a carpenter or anyone who understands it when they use it, they know a few things. Even before you start to use a hammer, you might have seen pictures or seen people use it and think you have to know that, okay, a hammer and a nail can only be used to drive the nail into certain types of materials. So if you have material X, there are carpenters who will know what type of nail is best to drive what type of nail is better to drive into material X versus material Y. And to drive in a nail, you need to have the nail well positioned. So you need to have the nail straight. I have a pen here. So, no, let's not do brand advertising for them. So you need to have a device, and then you need to be able to tap until it goes. So you can't, you want to get it at the right angle. And then you need to have the right amount of force, because if it is that you have a hammer, you start tapping lightly, and then once the nail is going in the direction you want it, then you can add more force, right? So AI is a similar thing, but you have to teach it a number of things. So you start to get this nail into the material, and once the nail is in the material and it's flush, so it's like, it's like this, you will stop hammering. Simple enough, right? Because this is something that I'm explaining to adults who are watching this. But transpose all of that to teach AI how to hammer nails into materials. Human intelligence will be able to see immediate challenges with hammering a screw into materials as opposed to a nail. You will see immediate challenges in terms of, say, trying to hammer in a nail into steel. It might not be designed for steel or concrete or granite. It's not designed for granite, as opposed to wood or other materials, right? So while you can hammer in a screw, it can be done. We know that we people know that screw is not a nail. But for an AI system, you have to teach it that because they look very similar, right? So I have two purple pens. Again, let me not do the brand advertising. So I have two purple pens here. One is erasable, one is not. And you can kind of tell that, if you know the branding and everything, you would know that one is erasable, one is not, one is actually purple ink, one is not, and all of that. And quick test. But you would have to teach AI systems that the two purple pens don't give you the same color. Human intelligence will also tell you that to not use a 6-inch nail for materials with a depth of only 4 inches, or else it will stick out the other side and that could cause harm. You have to teach an AI system that as well. And that having the pointy part is outside of the materials is not a desirable outcome. So hammering a nail is a pretty straightforward process for a lot of people, but this is just an example as to how much human intelligence you will now have to map into coding to teach AI, because AI wouldn't know these things. Now, just as teaching AI is about what is a nail and what is not a nail is a small aspect, and a simple function, hammering nails into materials, AI also has to be taught about force. So you and I intuitively know, like, start slow, tap, 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 and then, harder. And then when you get to a particular point, remove your fingers so you don't hurt yourself and hammer it in flush. But an AI system doesn't know about force unless it's taught. So an AI system can, if you don't teach it, it can exert too much force and destroy the hammer, or destroy the nail, or the material, or all of the above. And then what about removing a nail? Because we know that the claw like to flip it around and all of that. So this is the type of work that has been going on in the AI space for decades, that kind of simple teaching. And we've moved past now with technological developments, and mainly because of processing speeds and memory. The advances in tech have been coming in hot and heavy in the last 15 years. I remember when I got one of my early laptops and they were saying it's a light 9 pounds. And now we want things that are almost featherweight, because things are getting smaller, processing speeds getting more intense and more efficient. So because of memory and tech and battery life and all these things, it means AI can over time teach itself through experiences. And that would be the data inputs, because it might not necessarily need to do it to learn. So you have to have people who are careful in crafting the inputs and then monitoring the AI, because you want to make sure that the hammer is being used as a hammer and not a weapon. So, bless me. So that is, my nice analogy to help kind of give an understanding of AI and its development. Now, what about AI in our lives? AI has gone way beyond a hammer and a tool. Elon Musk has explored, self-driving cars. You have Chat GPT and Microsoft's Bing. They are all varying applications of artificial intelligence. Now, beyond Chat GPT, which is about to have an upgrade later this year or early 2025, there are also some similar AI applications. And in an interesting twist of faith, why I started to really dive into AI is because AI, the home of the AI domain, is in Anguilla, which I learned while I was there on secondment between 2019 and 2021. And Anguilla has been in the news because, of course, there's an uptick in registration of AI companies. And that is expected to surge massively in the coming years. So if you're registering an AI domain, know that it is based in Anguilla. Now, AI has demonstrated its usefulness in terms of scoring large data sets, and people have been using ChatGPT for homework and assignments. But just as people are using AI for that, there are educational institutions who have been also using AI to detect whether AI has been used to produce homework, right? But it can process huge amounts of data quickly. And even if you've never used one of the Chat GPTs or Bings or what have you, or Perplexity, you will very likely have used some form of AI and not even know it. Typing up an email and Gmail suggests the few words to the phrase to help you finish something you're typing. That's an example of AI, and more specifically, generative AI. There's much discussion on AI, and most of that has been either on generative, where AI takes data sets to generate whether a report or an email or dashboard or whatever the output may need to be. And then there's a lot of discussions about predictive AI. So this is where AI is used to predict certain outcomes based on the data that it has processed. Do we have predictive AI looking at a loan portfolio for a bank to see which particular bank customers may be on the verge of defaulting on a loan? So that's predictive AI based on different inputs that would be used. And the firms can make informed decisions, but whatever information is put out still has to be intelligently interrogated by a person. So using the bank example of the bank loan, if it are bank, facilities, if it is that you have persons who from a predictive AI report are shown to possibly have challenges paying their loans, you need a loans officer, commercial credit officer to review that information to see if there's merit there, because machines can be wrong. And sometimes people will put too much trust in machines. But two, you have to also look at the market conduct element, that decisions shouldn't be made on AI alone that would prejudice persons because they might have a unique situation going on, or the institution might be at fault as well. So there are a lot of things that might fall outside of the typical AI framework input and cause you to have skewed results. But we'll get into how to clean that up in a bit. And of course, if you have that element, then testing is also important. And the testing will have to go from the coding you use, the algorithms, to the outputs, testing the outputs to make sure that they actually match back or they're not false negatives. But again, that's something else we'll get into. But back to teaching artificial intelligence. You might have heard of the other ML, which is machine learning, and the discussions around large language models and natural language models. There's fuzzy data. There's a lot of things in this space. I am not a techie, but like I said, I went down a rabbit hole from 2019, 2020 in Anguilla, and it was I could see the benefits from way back when. And in the case of machine learning, that is your autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, your email spam filter. Over time, you go into Gmail and you ignore certain emails. Gmail will automatically send that certain type of email into spam. You need to go back and check in your spam folder to make sure that that's actually spam and not something that you wanted to see. You might also see product recommendations. This was a big one. So you think my computer is listening to me. You go on Amazon, you look for something in particular or another site, and then you leave it, you don't buy it. And then you visit another site and you see in the ads column the same thing or something similar to what you were looking at on that site. And so machine learning is one approach of leveraging AI, but it also allows computers to learn without being explicitly taught once you've coded it properly. And again, that's the data models, the data sets that are being used to train a machine. Again, think about the hammer analogy. You need a lot of data sets to help train the machine to hammer in a nail, as I outlined. But with good data, the machine can learn how to hammer in a nail more efficiently and more accurately over time, as well as learn the amount of force needed on different materials to get an optimal outcome. So it could be that the machine learning, all things being equal, will be able to say, well, I know exactly as the machine, based on all of these inputs gathered in this short period of time being fed into my systems, I know exactly which nail I need to use for which material to have which outcome, which length, which strength, what type of material the nail is made out of, and all of that. And so for a self-driving car, staying on the road is a big thing. So you want to make sure you stay on the road. And then safely navigating traffic is also another thing, because now remember, the traffic that's out on the road is dynamic. And think about you driving as a person and dealing with this who is not, driving on their brakes or something like that. And getting the passengers safely to the destination is the goal. There are a lot more inputs in self-driving cars, and so it takes a lot of data for them to learn. And just like how you as an individual may never encounter a situation but can recognize a danger, you want the machine to be able to learn over time to recognize certain dangers. I was telling someone about an incident I had where my Jeep nearly slid off a hill because the soil was like clay. And so my tires had taken up all of that, and basically I had no traction. But can AI detect that and then course correct? Because look, I had no course correction from my inputs. I recognized that I needed external outputs. So I called people before I attempted to drive down the hill, and thankfully I did. And so those people were able to basically push on the back of my Jeep to keep my Jeep on the hill and not falling off to the side and having a negative outcome. So, those are just some of the variables that AI would have to grapple with, because when you're driving you have to deal with like immediate reactions, and so sometimes machines can't quite do it. Now, as it relates to large language models, again, there's some terms and sometimes we hear them and we think, oh my God, that's so techie and that's beyond me. No, it's not beyond you. Those are models that are used to train computers on huge data sets. So go back now to the bank scenario. The bank scenario, looking at customers and their ability to pay loans, are going to look at global economic conditions, local conditions, average GDP, employment rates, timing of payments and all of that. And so it's inputted these, but not just on the one customer. It may be inputted that data from a larger set and from across different islands. So we have banks that are in groups here, and they may use data sets from across the region. And so you might have somebody being thrown up in Trinidad as being a likely candidate to go and default on their loan. But it's for the local loan officer now to look at that data to say, nah, I know this client, and because Trinidad has their carnival and thing just before Lent, this is a type of seasonal trend that we see, and people will pay their loans, and so we just have to send reminders in advance before people get a little too happy with the carnival celebrations, and we could mitigate that particular risk. So it still takes human intelligence to figure out what the actual situation is on the ground. But it's, as time progresses, you could program and train the AI to detect the nuances between Trinidad, Barbados, the BVI, Bahamas, Bermuda. I'm keeping with the B's because it's easy. So in that particular scenario. Any questions at this point in time? Because, yes, thank you for joining DJ Militants. I think he was one of them to keep the Jeep on the road at that time. So it is important to understand what the technology is, and it's not as difficult or scary as a lot of people may see it as being. But as time goes on, all of these AI applications will get better. And as we see the opportunities for the applications, there will be more AI apps in our lives. So with all these apps, guess what that means? Some of the basic jobs that are akin to driving a nail in with a hammer, those jobs are going to go away. But the jobs that require critical thinking and creativity of us as human beings will be paramount. Again, so we have DJ militants on. The DJ will be able to read the mood of the room to select the tracks that will have people feeling the vibe that they want to feel, the entertainment vibe and the dancing and thing. People are not necessarily responding to modern dance hall tonight. Maybe I'm going to try some old school reggae. Those are things that, come from the creative side of us that AI may not be able to ever replicate, ever, at least in my opinion. One of the tools that I know I've used early on is Google Translate in my travels, and it is still learning. And that's another example of the human experience. Now, we know that language is complex, and translators that work for, say, the United Nations, OECD, FATF can translate in real time. So can Google Translate. However, the human translator can pick up on nuances on what is being said that may influence the true meaning of the words. So what those the words that are put together, a human translator will know that it requires a slightly different translator than what Google Translate may pick up. And again, these are things being learned over time. In a lot of countries, you have dialects. So again, Jamaica is a good example. Papimento in the French, Dutch, well, Dutch Caribbean. Another aspect that I don't think Google Translate has been able to crack. And those are areas that will remain untouched for a little while. And when I say a little while, maybe another 10 years before Google Translate really gets into that. At least that's, again, based on my reading and what I've seen. There are other types of AI. So I've spoken about generative AI and predictive AI, which are the main focus of tonight's discussion. There are also other types of AI, which OpenAI and Elon Musk and others have spoken about, and that includes like the theorized self-aware AI. At least I still hope it's a theoretical concept. But again, no, this is the Skynet AI. And what I will say to you is that there's some thought leaders, people who are far smarter than me, who say that, if it is that you respect AI and that humanity doesn't try to enslave it or use its worst predications towards AI, then we should be fine in the digital future. Now, at this point, I will say, if you're finding this helpful or interesting or entertaining, make sure you share it with your friends, families, enemies, anyone who might be interested in this, so that it can help more people get better clarity on compliance issues and compliance issues that overlap with technology that will impact us all. Because, the AI, the apps, you have the banking apps on your phone and all that. We are really in the digital age. And in the Caribbean, we're definitely about to jump in on that, whether by will or by force. Now, for applications and compliance, beyond taking a peek at publicly available information on the types of companies that were being registered in Anguilla in 2019, 2020, with the AI domain, what I saw for just generally, globally looking, all the AI applications that could be used in financial services, for operations, again, go back to banking mainly, but you're having some developments in the insurance space, and then you'll also have developments that will evolve beyond that. There's a lot of companies talking about due diligence using AI, transaction monitoring using AI, having generative reports, reg tech, so regulatory technologies or supervisory technologies that also use AI. And this is how AI applications are being considered for use by competent authorities such as regulators, so regulatory authorities around the world, law enforcement agencies, and even to some judiciaries. And remember, the thing that AI is really good at, it's really good at taking huge amounts of data and processing it. And so if you're looking at processing large data sets, it would be really good for you to become very good at critically thinking on compliance. When you think about data sets, think about like just customers for any institution. So anybody has a customer, a bank, a bakery, a laundromat, an insurance company, a trust company, but you have customers. You have their names and different bits of information. So when you have a new customer, how do you onboard them? So that's taking on their data. Of course, the laundry is not necessarily minded with AML CFT controls, but surely the bank is. So they have to capture certain bits of information. And then as they maintain that customer over time, they have to be minded with ongoing monitoring. And there is so much data that could be present from just the people element that impacts any firms, and going beyond financial institutions to designated non-financial businesses and persons. So law firms, accountants, real estate agents, casinos, car dealers, high-value dealers, jewelers, it's a big list. They also have due diligence requirements and AML CFT requirements. So due diligence is a common denominator in a lot of entities, and so is the risk assessment process. So let's just look at that for a little bit. Due diligence, or KYC. AI can be used to help assess the veracity of information provided by the customer quickly. And it can also be used to map certain risk assessment aspects, so data points, or flag customers that should be subject to more scrutiny, even if it is whether they're onboarded or at the point of monitoring. And how that AI system is calibrated will make all the difference. You would then be able to use AI, if you have developed the AI properly, to generate reports on the level of regulatory compliance that is there in relation to a customer, and what data sets that are being used by the firm in its KYC processes would inform what information could be provided. Another aspect that has shown really good value, and so AI is already out there doing its thing to help in this area, is transaction monitoring. We're coming up to the holiday seasons, and a lot of scams and frauds happen around this time. People's cards are stolen, or the information is compromised, banks or whatever the case may be. And so certain banks or different institutions would have AI in their transaction monitoring to detect suspicious transaction report, to detect fraud, to detect theft, and then be able to stop people from losing money more quickly, or throw up alerts or send suspicious transaction reports. And any financial services firm would have a number of transactions that would trigger compliance measures. So you might have currency thresholds, the $10,000 amount or more. It depends on the jurisdiction, because not all countries have the same amount, and not all institutions have the same amount. But you would have, you could have generative AI produce certain reports for currency transactions. Again, in other forms, the volume, it might not be high value, but the volume of transactions may be massive, especially around Christmas. So a well-developed AI application can be used to flag the transactions that might be fraud, might be risky from different areas, and generate the reports that you need. No questions so far? I still have no curtain. Let's do this next slide. I still have no curtains up. But that's all right. I do not have close neighbors, so that's fine. All right, so no questions that I'm seeing. AI and bad behavior. Now, when you look at any tool can be used for good or bad. And for AI, you have to understand the potential misuse to develop mitigation strategies for compliance. And I think it was Elon Musk that said AI is a double-edged sword. And that is so very true. Criminals are always the early adopters. And now we see the havoc that is being wrought on people's lives through deep fakes, phishing scams, and more. You have AI chatbots aimed at unsuspecting firms and bank customers or customers of other firms who are being defrauded by scammers who are mainly using generative AI. And I can remember a few years ago, Jersey FSC, so the Jersey Financial Services Commission, had a number of alerts on scams that were impacting that particular jurisdiction a few years ago. I haven't checked their website for some time, but the regulatory authorities and FIUs of your country, the website in those countries, can be very good resources for the general public to stay up to date on what the current scams and frauds are. But there are also international bodies that will push out reports. So FATF, Egmont, and that's the group of financial intelligence units. And there are some other bodies that will put out reports on the scams, the frauds, the threats. But unless you're looking in the space, a lot of people are not aware. So if you're in compliance, or if you're here on the live and you're not in compliance, but you're just, supporting me and you're interested, tell your friends about the trending scams that you may see. I am going to be coming down to the Christmas time. I'm going to be highlighting some of them as well, so that you will be aware as to what scams to look out for, so you're not defrauded and somebody else having a really green Christmas on your expense. Now, if you are a compliance professional, you actually have a bit of work to do as it relates to AI and other technologies in your compliance work. FATF published a report a little while back on opportunities and challenges for new technologies. And in that document, FATF had a section that specifically addressed AI. And there was a point where it said that AI had it potentially help to better identify risks and respond to, communicate, and monitor suspicious activity. And the document also said that AI and machine learning tools or solutions can also generate more accurate and complete assessments of ongoing customer due diligence and customer risk, which can be updated to account for new and emerging threats in real time. However, AI and machine learning solutions vary greatly in both technology and use and may present significant risk. Yes, I'm reading that. But this is from the report, and I did update the links in the description to this live so that you could go back and read the document. That was around page 37. But if you haven't read it, you should read it, especially if you're in compliance. But AI is not the only technology that's covered in that particular document. But what I like about the document is that it provides a few case studies, as well as highlighting some public-private partnerships that have been successful using AI to prevent criminals. And they talk about like human trafficking and some other crimes. So as it relates to the bad actors, there was a case that was brought to my attention by someone in the industry earlier this year. I think it was around February, where a UK firm was the victim of an AI attack, a deep fake scam. And the chief financial officer transferred £25 million to scammers. And the scammers basically used the AI to fake the CEO's voice. And it was an architectural firm, I think it's Arup. And yeah, it made the news, unfortunate. But I was made aware of a similar attempt that was made very recently at another firm, but the scammers were unsuccessful. And why? The scammers tried to perpetrate the scam while the CEO was at 36,000 feet. And the CFO knew that the CEO was on a plane and out of communication, and that he could not be making the call. And so nothing happened. They were not defrauded. Of course, it was reported and all of that. And, their systems were uncompromised. Now, what do you do if that happens to you? In both cases, the scammers were seeking to leverage urgency, so the need for this urgent transaction, along with a deep fake voice to scam companies. And of course, they're going after companies with a lot of liquid assets. But the scams also highlighted the need for another thing: robust compliance procedures to address scenario-based occurrences. And this is something that I've spoken about in another place. When you're talking about your compliance procedures and everything else, you need to have, do X, do Y, do Z. And then people learn through case studies, like real life examples. It's one thing to say, all right, put the widget into space A. But if you give a scenario to say, if the CEO calls you, or the CFO calls you, or some executive calls you with an urgent request, these are the procedures to follow. And if you cannot verify that this is him, this is a legitimate request, maybe put two-factor authentication. I don't know. I'm making a fictitious list up on the fly. This is not something that exists that I looked at in any regulatory organization or regulated organization. But you have to have procedures that are in place so that you're not defrauded. And so if you don't have a process for what would be an out on towards requests or emergency requests, because emergencies can happen, you probably might need to go back and look at that after this live, see whether you have that in your complaints procedures, and if not, figure that out and draft something up. Now, that's just one example of AI being misused in real life that was in the news. I'm gonna look for it. If it's not in the description, no, I'm gonna look for it and put it in the description. But definitely, this is the world we live in. Interesting times. Definitely interesting times. So now AI vendors, and what should compliance professionals really be looking at? There are a number of issues that AI professionals have to consider when, okay, it's the digital age. I want to be all modern. How do I integrate artificial intelligence or another technology into my system? And the biggest factor for you to use AI is your data. The state of your data is going to be the single biggest hurdle for you, or is going to be the thing that makes you a winner. Now, remember that artificial intelligence needs to be taught, and the data that you put in needs to be clean, because a lot of firms have dirty data, and dirty data is like, unstructured data is one thing, and you can have programs developed to use that and leverage that into an AI system. But if your data is really all over the place, it's going to be more of a battle and probably more expensive for you to use AI. But you might even be data dark. You might have data and not even recognize that you have data that you can use. And so dirty data, you might not have a systematic way of recording certain data sets. So let's use a simple one, names. So your system may allow for S. Martin, S.E. Martin, Simone E. Martin, Martin Simone, and more. And if you have really dirty data, you might spell Simone Simone, Symone, Semone, Cymone. I've seen that, and not to say that people don't spell their children name like that. Simone is the correct way. Sorry to break it to anybody with any different spelling. But when it is that you have persons who might not recognize that like the spelling of the name and how you capture names is going to be impacting future upgrades to your system, that is going to be a problem. Now imagine if you spelled my name wrong, or it's S.E. Martin, and then you try to run my name through a simple AI interface. You will never find out that I may be a sanctioned person. You may never find out that I just committed this big time crime and wanted in 17 different countries. I don't know. But just the name as a data point, that's one data point. And so you have to link the data point to the right spelling name, the date of birth, the nationalities. A lot of firms will just take one nationality. We live in an age of citizenship by investment. So people might have other passports springing up on them. So have your nationalities and all of that. And those data sets will help you to basically be able to intelligently interrogate your data and really get the maximum output out of these tools, right? AI, a tool. So you have to make sure that how you store data is consistent and correct. But data isn't the only thing that compliance professionals have to consider. There's a lot of interplay between compliance, regulatory requirements, technologies, AI, and one of the most significant challenges cited in the same FATF document that I mentioned was regulatory requirements. So what it says to me is that while there's a future focus on AI and other technologies, firms are still seeking directions from their regulatory authorities, wherever they are, may be in the world. And you don't need your regulatory authority to tell you that you should risk assess any potential AI vendor and to do your due diligence, because why? That requirement is pretty much set out in every authority's law. It may be called something else, but in most countries it is there. Whether it's reliance on third parties, outsourcing, or certain relationship, there's something that exists internationally at this point in time. And that's because it is going to be based on the international standards that FATF has put out in this space. However, the FATF document also informs regulators as to what they should be doing. So I see regulators around the world will be getting onto issuing guidance in the future. But if you are looking to go forward into this brave new world, these are some of my opinions. Remember, these are my opinions and all this good stuff. It's about, I think, six of them. But here's some takeaways, key elements. One, do not start an AI or tech discussion without the compliance officers. There's so many firms that feel that they can delegate AI or tech developments to IT and operations. That's a huge mistake. Even if it is that the AI is not being used for compliance, the use of AI is a technological risk that is in scope for the compliance officer. So make sure that the compliance officer understands it. And if you are explaining system development to a compliance officer or other non-technical staff, do not think that, okay, this is a specialized area. They don't need to know the intricate details. They only need to know the basics and have all this jargon. That will not do you any favors. As a colleague in the compliance and consultancy space noted last week at the CRCA conference, regulators are not going to swallow the approach of, I'll get the IT vendor to explain it. That ain't gonna help you, because you already failed whatever assessment the regulator may be doing. And this person has worked in multiple jurisdictions, but mainly in the US, but in the Caribbean as well. Like, no, Caribbean, Asia, Pacific region, EU, no, people need to understand this, because complexity, remember that complexity in structures is also a risk, a potential money laundering, terrorist financing, or operational regulatory compliance risk. Complexity in technology is going to be an equivalent. So don't have your technology to be a point of like, well, only an astrophysicist can understand this, and you lowly regulator, you just have to take our word for it, or have your IT people speak to all IT people. That is a non-starter. Two, beyond the due diligence of the vendor and the risk assessment, determine whether the AI vendor has a deep understanding of the outcomes you are seeking. They have some things that are off the shelf. They have some developers that are out there, but it's a brave new world. You can actually develop what you want, but you also need to understand how the data, once you have integrated AI or other tech, how that data is being stored following any implementation, because you may trigger some data privacy requirements, and you don't want to find that out kind of by accident. You kind of want to be proactive and know that, okay, I need to know these things and to develop these systems and controls for that. Three, talk to your regulator, whatever part of the world you're in, whether they have guidance or not. Talk to them if there's guidance. Talk to them if there's no guidance. Have a discussion with them, and they can help you navigate issues that may be unique to your particular business or your firm or your profession. So that's a definite takeaway. A lot of people run from regulators. They're not bad. I know some of them, So that's my little random joke. But talk to them. Four. So because the technology is improving every day, think about smartphones. Like, there was a point in time where you had smartphones, and you would have the phone for a couple of years, and it's like every 6 months smartphones are updated. The technology, you can craft what you want. And so there are a lot of new developments almost every day in the space. And you can tailor the AI outputs. So consider what outputs would be useful for you. Do you need hotspots where you have things that are thrown up to you to look at these hotspots urgently? Do you need threat mapping? Do you need dashboards? Craft the application. You have an ability to actually look at how the data is going to be presented to you, because the actual output is a style. It oftentimes is a stylistic choice. So it could be reports, sterile, words and numbers and what have you. But you could also have it be like an infographic type thing, in addition to the words and text reports. Five, Before you integrate AI into your systems, consider whether you can decouple it from your systems if things don't work. So before you get in, make sure you can get out unscathed. Beta testing is ideal. And so you might have the two systems running concurrently to make sure that AI, while it's being integrated, is rigorously tested and that you're happy with it and that the vendor can support you, and that your systems, your data is also yours and not triggering some other jurisdiction's requirements. Before you set it out into the wild, the next point is to make sure you establish AI specific governance policies. Now, why is that? Firms have to teach again. Remember, you're teaching the system, and your corporate culture might have some internal risks. And those internal risks can impact the potential adoption of artificial intelligence. Remember that people are using the tools, and if you have persons who refuse to use the hammer to drive nails incorrectly, you could have the best system on the planet and still get horrible results. So, what do you do with that? Governance will have you looking at a number of issues, including ethics. What happens if somebody is purposefully feeding your AI system dirty data or corrupted data or whatever the case may be? You need to have procedures in terms of how to deal with that, because there's a human risk element as well. And quickly address practices. You may need to have engagements and training so that mindsets are such a big thing. People, let me tell you, people are interesting. Some people will fear the technology. Some people will think that AI is going to take my job, so I'm not going to use it. I am not going to use it properly. It's going to replace me, and I am not on board with this. And a lot of firms that have forayed into this space have learned the hard way that if you don't make sure you have buy-in from the staff, you will not have good outcomes. The last point I would add on this is to make sure you get your systems audited. Now, having had a former life as an auditor, I believe in verification. Verify that things are working as they should. It is critical for technologies. If it is that you have AI or another tech tool, you need to make sure like what it says it's doing that and nothing extra, right? Not that we're going to become Skynet, but you want to make sure that it's working. Once you launch a system, you cannot just let it run into the wild and do things on its own. You have to go back and test and audit the system. Now, testing and auditing are two separate things. So you're testing incrementally. Like, is it throwing up that this person is a PEP, politically exposed person, or is the system missing that? Or is the system missing something else? And so I might need to retrain it. And then auditing, get an independent external person to audit the system to make sure that the code is doing what it's supposed to do. Algorithms are doing what's supposed to do. Reports are being properly generated. The reports are as complete as they need to be. And the ongoing testing will make sure that before you even get to an audit, you don't have a nasty surprise, thinking that, you've been doing this thing properly, and then you find out what fresh hell is this. There are a few more elements, but I'm going to be talking about them in a different space. Chasing compliance, again, in the description below. That's where my bonus material will be by the weekend. So I'm not going to say much more about that. At this point in time, just a little intermission. Some of you will be familiar that I published a whole book. Yeah. So if it's available on Amazon, there are a couple copies at Staycation. If you are in the British Virgin Islands, more copies are coming in. There are a few copies that I am ordering because people have requested them and everything else. But after that, like, you will have to get it on Amazon yourself or go to Staycation and get it. And I've been on for over an hour now. All right, so I think I mentioned earlier about ethics in artificial intelligence and other tech applications. it is a matter that is in focus. And one of the things that I saw recently in a group chat that I'm in is that the Monetary Authority of Singapore put out a press release stating that it is willing to work with financial industry partners to create a framework for financial institutions to promote responsible adoption of artificial intelligence and data analytics. To me, this is an awesome move. I may have mentioned it maybe in one other of my YouTube videos. I don't even know where. But for over 15 years, the Monetary Authority of Singapore is a regulator that I stalk. I love a lot of the things that they've put out, and they're always forward looking. And why put this out? Because as with everything, AI systems can be corrupted, and data, interpreting data, so the data analytics can also be skewed to get certain outcomes, right? If it is that they tell you, like, you're supposed to eat 20% fats and all of that, get into these things, but they don't break down to say that, okay, the fats should be this type of fat versus that type of fat and all of that. And I'm saying that because, like, I'm trying to fix my diet. But technologies are often used by bad actors, and they're leveraging the technologies quick, fast, and in a hurry. I'm sure that they have their own strategic alliances and partnerships, and it's important for the good players to also have their strategic partnerships. The data sets that are now being collected by firms, whether they use AI or not, can be tempting honeypots. So basically, like, a honeypot is, you get in there and it's like, target rich environment. And it has a lot of information, a lot of assets, a lot of money, a lot of access. You could create fake IDs on real people and all of that. And so it's a risk. It's a risk. And the threats are real. The concern is real. And so in the AI space, the development of algorithms, whether by criminals or by people who may not be criminals, but just are fearful to think like AI is going to take my job, could slow adoption and create more problems than we need. So I think that the move by Monetary Authority of Singapore is really good. But yeah, so, okay. So I don't want to keep you much longer. We're going to do a quick recap of the more critical considerations. Of course, these are my opinions, for AI in compliance. One, do not begin any tech discussions within your firm once your firm has AML, CFP responsibilities without the compliance officer. AML, anti-money laundering. CFT, counter-financing of terrorism. CPF, counter-proliferation financing. We have a saying here in the BVI, what's that bad can't end good. And even if AI or other technologies are not designed for compliance, so it may be being used in another part of the firm for marketing or customer responses or whatever, it is a part of the risk framework for the firm, and it brings compliance right back in scope. So don't pretend like, oh, no, compliance doesn't need to be involved. They do. Clean data is a must for your best outcomes. Make sure that the state of your data and your record keeping is optimal. Just if you haven't already, clean that up. It'll help you in the long run. Know your vendor. So AI vendors, tech vendors, there are a lot of firms popping up offering amazing solutions. Some have been around and may have NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, with other firms to prevent you from knowing how good or bad they have been. So do your due diligence differently. You have to attack these interrogations from a different perspective and risk assess the vendors. Remember, they might be focused on sales and getting a certain amount of people to sign on and not necessarily committed to servicing your firm for a longer term. And remember, FATF has a whole recommendation specific to new technologies as well. There was a story I heard months ago about a firm somewhere in the States that had adopted some technologies, and it was from a startup firm. The technologies were amazing, but of course, with coding, you might need to update the code, make sure you have cyber security and cyber resiliency built in. And the founders of the company decided, right, we're going to go move on to some other project, and left that particular firm high and dry. And, they've been spending so much money trying to figure out their way because they no longer have that support. So, making sure you do your due diligence is really important. The next point, engage your regulator. For you, those of you in scope, the regulator may not be a financial services regulator. So it may be a self-regulatory authority or financial intelligence unit in your country, or maybe called something else. And remember, guidance may or may not exist, but it's important to have those open discussions. The next point, read your FATF reports. So beyond mutual evaluation reports, FATF publishes a number of documents on so many things, and that includes the documents dealing with new opportunities and challenges of new technologies. But there are also other documents that can be very helpful to navigate the space. Go explore the FATF website. It is a good place to start. But the document that I referenced on the tech is in the description to this video. Another point was to take time to craft a system that serves you. It's important to take that time because guess what? You're going to be the one using it. Why not craft it to be something that you want it to be? The next point, a tech prenup. Like marriage, sometimes, it's all the honeymoon period is awesome. And then when it comes to the breakup, people are like, oh, how do I get out? And it takes a lot longer to get out. Know how to decouple your data from the new application, or learn whether you can even do that. And take safeguards before you really commit, and test the systems really well. Test and audit is the next point all along the way. Remember that you have to verify that the system is delivering what you paid for. You paid a lot of money. You want to make sure it's working properly and that it's actually delivering as per advertised. And then I think the last point for tonight is to make sure you update your governance framework as it relates to technologies, as well as the ethical considerations around technologies. What do you do if an employee goes rogue because they feel that AI is going to take their jobs and that they're going to be living in a matrix? So I think I'll end it here, end the live here. I didn't get any questions, so one last call for questions. But as I wrap up, I hope you did get some value from this. It is the first in the compliance and tech and compliance live series. And the next one is going to be sometime next week. The next topic is going to be on tokenization, but next week is also a big week. That live may be on Wednesday or Friday or Saturday, because next week, Thursday, I will be celebrating my Halloween birthday. So as a birthday gift, share the channel, subscribe, get people to subscribe. Let people know about my book. I have it in the community section. I have to update that community section again. But yeah, so there will be another live. And like I said, I'm going to be challenging myself to do more lives in the latter part of the year than I've done for the entire year. So it's going to be lit. So don't forget, compliance moves fast. And I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I'm still planning on doing a podcast. The podcast will be available for the members of Chasing Compliance. And there'll be some public elements, some private elements. But what I am looking forward to is this space. I also have a compliance planner. So let's get the free promo out again. I have the compliance book here out, but I also have the compliance planner that's finished. We're going to see when Amazon releases it. And we're going to keep the momentum going. I have links in the description for my LinkedIn page, also for English Solutions. And I think I've said enough. So there's a lot more in store, and I'm looking forward to engaging with all of you sometime next week. and have a good night. And bye, everyone. Bye. And thank you for joining me. Bye, guys. Awesome. Thanks for that, Richard. I'll definitely keep everybody posted. So look out for the communities page for updates. And have a good evening. See you, Jade. Bye, guys. Bye, Ryan. Bye, Gabriel. Bye, militants. Bye, everyone. Bye, Mackie.